Couples therapists, without breaking confidentiality, what are some relationships that instantly set off red flags, and do you try and get them to work out?
My grandaunt was a couples therapist for many, many years. Now she volunteers at her church counseling couples.
She's my relationship sage. Number of red flags she's told me about. First, spouses who don't sleep together without a justifiable reason, as in not due to work conflicts or medical reasons, but because one spouse just doesn't feel like going to bed alongside the other. Lack of intimacy will lead to the two drifting apart. Second, when one spouse has a close relationship with a member of the opposite gender who doesn't like the other spouse, the old he, she's just a friend. If it doesn't lead to cheating, it will still usually cause unneeded strain that will break apart the relationship. Third, one that initially surprised me, quote, we're staying together for the kids, unquote. It leads to an unhealthy mindset where the couple sees the children as a burden and believe that by remaining in an unhealthy relationship, it will somehow make the kids turn out all right. Kids are smarter than you think, and if mom and dad don't love each other, they'll pick up on it. If the kids are really the priority, either learn to fix a relationship or end it. And finally, fourth, in premarital counseling, when the couple states that they're saving themselves for their wedding night and then one or both confides privately that they're not abstinent and the other has no idea. In broader terms, when a couple isn't honest with each other about their intimate history. So many reasons that's unhealthy. I can't even begin to list them all, but the biggest is that honesty is the most solid foundation on which to build a relationship. If you're afraid of what your partner will think, ask yourself if you want to deal with it now or later. Deal with it now. The biggest problems she's dealt with are when it's clearly the fault of one member of the relationship and the other desperately wants to fix the issue. Like in the first instance, she told me of a couple where she understood that the wife wanted out of the relationship, but didn't want to directly confront her husband about it, while the husband thought the issue was just a minor problem. Turns out the wife had to actually cheat in order for the husband to realize how serious things were, which led to him ending up on antidepressants and contemplating self-harm. From what she told me, that one ended in an acrimonious divorce, but she never told me what became of either party. Something she emphasizes is that people are often blind to the red flags that a therapist can spot right away.
Such is the nature of being a trained professional.
It's why she recommends people see a counselor even if they don't think their issues are that deep. It's not shameful to ask for help, she always says. Story 2. Obligatory, not a therapist, but my own experience in therapy. My wife and I, separated now, went to couples counseling where it was a husband-wife counseling team. I thought that would be great since it may help us open up more having a member of both genders there. My wife was hesitant about couples counseling but agreed to try it. We had our initial session together and it was cold and it was difficult, as expected. And my wife said she still wanted to leave, but they convinced her to try a few more sessions to see if anything clicked as we opened up. We had an individual session the next time and I thought it went fantastically. I gained a completely different understanding of intimacy, emotional and relational, and I was jazzed to start working at putting it into practice. My wife came out with tear stains and sat in her car crying before she finally left for home. We drove separately because she was coming from work and I from home. Our next appointment was another individual session. The male counselor and I were talking again, and he started digging into my expectations and desires in the relationship, what I loved about my wife, etc. He point blank asked me, do you feel wife is a good match for you in life and that you want to continue this relationship? And I was a little off-put, but figured, yeah, it's probably a good thing to establish that right off the bat, so I answered emphatically yes, and he just looked heartbroken and so very sad. I knew pretty well right then and there that we were toast. My wife had admitted her affair that day before our next session and left. That ending was very difficult to read. I'm sorry to hear that. Just remember her affair isn't a reflection of your value, but I guess that's still successful couples counseling. They got to the bottom of it and the guy was able to move forward in his life. Story 3. My most favorite exercise in couples counseling is to have them listen to 45 seconds to 1 minute of instrumental music. Think Lorena McKenna, Greensleeves, or something like that. Music that people don't really usually listen to. Then I ask person A to tell person B what they imagined while they were listening to the music. Then person B shares the same. Then we listen to the same music again, but I asked person A to try and see what person B and vice versa imagined, and pay attention to what they think and feel when they do that. Interesting dynamics come up immediately. I'll share my own personal story here from when my own couples therapist did this with an ex and I. Me? Oh, I imagine myself wearing a long, billowing green dress walking through a green valley. Think Scotland or Ireland. A remote castle was at the top of the hill and my scarf was flying in the wind. There was a gentle, bubbly stream somewhere there too. Him. I imagine myself on a cliff with the ocean waves crashing violently on the rocks. There was a storm with lightning and thunder. I was cold. Awesome therapist. Credit where credit is due. He was awesome. Okay, let's do that again, but try to see if you can visualize what the other person imagined, okay? And the music clip played again. Me, inner thoughts. Okay, so the cliff, yeah, I can see that, but come on now. A storm and violent waves? No way. Bubbly stream is so clear here. Okay, so waves and what did he say again? Cold? That's so stupid.
It's a nice warm day, maybe a bit windy, but if it evoked cold, I would have never imagined myself in a dress.
Wait, I'm supposed to be imagining his scenario. It just didn't fit. Why did he? When will this be over? AT, okay, so tell me how that went. Him, I tried. I really did, but I started visualizing her scene and it was so off. I mean, I'll give her the green and all, but me? Why do you always invalidate what I perceive? Never mind that I had just done the same in my head with him, by the way. So, anyone want to analyze the twisted dynamics that were at play during our whole relationship there? I laugh gently while I tell you guys this, but they were very clear from the outside and very confusing and combative from the inside. Also, in my humble opinion, and sometimes not so humble, all therapists should experience couples counseling. Not only did it change the way I practiced it myself, but it literally changed the way I built future relationships. And yes, this is a glowing endorsement for that part of therapy that I choose not to practice a lot. If one is ever on the fence about going to couples counseling, know that while it might not save this relationship, it will save you in subsequent ones. It will give you the tools to communicate with other partners in the future, or it will give you insight in how you love and relate to others in ways individual counseling sometimes doesn't. Anyway, I adopted this exercise in my repertoire, and I'm continually amazed at how revealing it is. Big red flag when we do this. Person J has trouble expressing what they visualized. Person R has zero trouble. Then person J reports they can 100% see what person R visualized, and person R is very critical of person J's experience or heavily indulgent. Oh yeah, I saw it. What did you think while visualizing it? Oh, I was doing the exercise correctly. Symbiotic relationships, codependency, narcissism, and cruelty are things I immediately screen for if this is the result. Finally, don't do couples counseling if your partner is cruel. It doesn't work. It won't work. You will give the other person the tools and language to make you feel even worse, and there will be heavy retaliations at home if you reveal the truth. Not worth it. Go by yourself if you know or suspect cruel markers in your relationship. Story 4. Child and family therapist here, not exactly couples therapy, but there are key family dynamics that set off red flags for interpersonal relationships within a family, whether it is between parents, parents and kids, or simply kids. The most important piece comes from invalidation. This comes in many forms, from gaslighting to just simple denial of another's opinion. Most of the time, one or both parties are simply trying to be heard on an emotional level with an event or topic that was brought up, but the other party takes this as a personal attack on their ideals. Now, we've all heard of or know people who will literally disagree with anything you say simply because you said it. That's the invalidation I'm referring to. Cliche moral of the story, attack the problem, not each other. People rarely have the exact same stance in a conflict, but usually, in healthy relationships, have very similar core values. While two parents may disagree on how to parent a child, authoritarian versus authoritative, for example, the core value of caring about their children and wanting them to succeed is often the same. By determining they are within the same realm of issue, two parents with different ideals can see themselves as allies in a conflict rather than enemies. Two things that people believe are red flags of poor relationships are the amount of conflicts the couple has and yelling. Neither is inherently a characteristic of good or bad relationships, but may be perceived as more common in bad relationships. The reality of the situation is that healthy relationships actually have a comparable amount of conflicts, but more intensely focus on addressing the core issue rather than the beliefs and self worth of the other. As for yelling, in this case, it's an emotional response to not feeling heard. While not the best response to distress, it also isn't an indicator of poor communication skills. What is an indicator of poor communication is yelling over the other person in an attempt to invalidate their point. Semi related example, I had two people who were seemingly incredibly upset at each other. Parent A felt that parent B was out of the house too frequently and did not want to be a part of their children's life. Parent B felt that parent A didn't understand how busy their work schedule was. The fight revolved around parent B seemingly not caring about the kids until parent B explained that they felt parent A was better at parenting and felt like they were only escalating the children when they started to parent. Parent A's understanding of the argument quickly changed from, "You don't love our children," to, "You're scared to let our children down." As you can guess, the tone of the conversation changed drastically, and there was no longer a sense that parent A and B were on opposing sides. The issue instead became helping build confidence in parent B's parenting abilities, which parent A was much more validating and supporting of. Not all cases are this clean cut by any means, but I'd figured I'd demonstrate the basic idea of finding core values and attacking an issue together. Story 5. When one person is entirely dependent on the other, especially at a relatively young age, I mean financially and emotionally. These are typically young women, sometimes young men as well, who do not work, do not have children, stay home all day, and have no friends or hobbies outside of hanging out with their spouse. Very unhealthy and a huge red flag. Always ends in a painful and messy breakup. Generally, we try to get them to find a friend, join a community, get a job, or volunteer, something to provide them with self worth and personal fulfillment outside of their spouse. I always wonder how this ends up happening. The idea of joining a relationship without anything of your own to fall back on is legitimately terrifying. Anyway, since you're already here, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you wouldn't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Now let's get back to the stories. Story 6. Relationship therapist here. One of the biggest red flags I see when working with a new couple is when they've totally forgotten the good. Part of relationship therapy is reconnecting a couple with what they like about each other, what initially attracted them to each other, and what the positives are between them. When people come in and they've been so unhappy for so long that they actually can't remember what it was like to be in love or to even like each other, they're just about hopeless. You don't have to be happy for therapy to work, but if you can't even reminisce about the good times, then the good times are probably over. This is clearly resonating with some folks, so I'd like to recommend a book. If you find yourself in this situation, check out Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson. She gives some solid explanations of how people get into this cycle, as well as some suggestions on how to try and navigate it. Story 7. Someone else's response made me think of this one when a partner raises an objection to meeting with me individually. During the first session, I share that during assessment, I like to meet with them both together and once each individually. Occasionally, I have partners who suddenly become very critical or suspicious about this, asking why I do that and is it ethical, and the classic, "I've never heard of a marriage counselor doing that before." It goes beyond curiosity or simply inquiring about practice. There is an incredulous and almost panic tone to it. And sure enough, every single time, they turn out to be some variation of controlling, manipulative, cruel. Just to clarify, I'm not talking about doing concurrent, ongoing individual and couple sessions. This is just a one off individual assessment session. My first 3 sessions are usually 1, couple section, 2, partner A individual, and 3, partner B individual. After that, we typically only see each other as a couple unless another one off is needed for further assessment down the road. If needed, I refer out for ongoing concurrent individual or pause for more intensive individual. Now, this one makes a lot of sense. It's like they're scared of not being able to control theirs or someone else's image if they can't be in the room with them. Total red flag. Story 8. This brings up thoughts, feelings, and memories I go barely a day or two trying not to think about. I'm not a therapist, but was a patient of one, and this is the situation they dealt with before they basically washed their hands of us and told us that we shouldn't be together. So before I got married, I begged my partner of over 10 years, we got together when I was almost 18, to go to counseling and therapy with me, but he refused. I was incredibly hurt and unable to understand why he didn't want to sleep with me. We did it maybe 3, 4 times a year at the most. Now, without sounding big headed, I knew that I was attractive when I would go out with friends. I was always having men flirt with me. Even at work, I'd sometimes get little messages from male coworkers left on my desk asking me out. I never encouraged this. I was completely and utterly devoted to my partner. Things got a little better in the months before we married, and I was overjoyed thinking that we had turned a corner and we were on our way to being more of my idea of a happy, loving couple, able to physically demonstrate their love would be. Unfortunately, after the wedding, things were worse than ever before. I had always taken care of my appearance, but I started wearing corsets, stockings, etc. I begged him to tell me what was wrong, but he wouldn't say anything. This truly hurt as I knew that he would have fun by himself or watch adult videos, but wasn't interested in getting with me. A year went by without us being intimate even once, despite my attempts to initiate anything, even a kiss, but he wasn't interested. The only affection we shared was hugs or kisses on the cheek. I felt like I was more of a sister than a wife. Again, I asked him to go to marriage counseling, and again, he refused. At this time, I got a new job. I was headhunted along with close friends from our previous employer. We were required to attend several social events at the beginning, which generally ended with the younger employees going clubbing afterwards. I'm not proud of this, but I met a guy in one of these nights who was incredibly attractive and who was obviously very interested in me, and a few weeks later, I cheated on my ex with him. I was ashamed and told my ex everything, at which point he then decided we needed to go to therapy. Unfortunately, it didn't go well. My ex would spend each session reading out a pre written script about how intimacy isn't important in a relationship and about how badly I'd treated him. I was not allowed to speak even when the therapist got clearly frustrated and told him I needed to be able to express my thoughts and feelings. Although I'd wanted to try and fix things and was ashamed of what I'd done, I wasn't allowed to talk at all, and this just made me very angry. My ex refused to answer any question about why he didn't want to sleep with me. So, in the end, the therapist just said that there was no way that our differences could be reconciled. 10 years later, I'm still very sad about how things ended, and I'll never stop being ashamed of cheating, but I doubt that we would have been happy even if I hadn't. Story 9. I have two. First, I saw a couple that was doing retaliatory cheating and telling each other about it. When they got through their anger, they decided to call a truce and made peace. With their level of emotional maturity, I doubt it lasted. I don't know if I helped them or prolonged their suffering. It was their decision to come to counseling, so I think it was the help they wanted. Other clients realize what they really want is divorce counseling. What's the best way to behave civilly and minimize damage to the kids while we go our separate ways? Second, one partner says they're seeking your services to help them determine if they want to stay together. The other partner says they're seeking your services to make it so they stay together. Then it's about highlighting the points and allowing the person who is on the fence to decide what they want since the other person knows. That's so depressing, just waiting for someone to decide if they want you. Let me know how you feel about that in the comments below. Story 10. First, couples in a tit for tat arrangement. For example, I cheated so you can have one night to cheat with whomever. Or I violated your trust and did substances so you can go out and do whatever for one night. It erodes trust and compounds the hurt. Second, an affair that just won't end. I've never seen a relationship bounce back where a partner is still in contact with their girlfriend or boyfriend. I don't mean an ex, BF, or GF. I mean the person X is having the affair with or is lying about it. Third, control to an excessive amount. I most commonly see partners having to send pictures holding up a certain number of fingers or proving that it's a live picture. This is exploitation. And fourth, overbearing parents and in-laws. I understand there's a ton of cultural nuance here, and I work with couples who have arranged marriages, as well as the South Asian community. However, when a spouse is more allied with their parents and calls them on speakerphone for fights, or often speaks ill of their partner to their parents, I usually see these couples stay very unhappily married for years. It's sad. If it's not cruelty and a partner is willing to end an affair and genuinely work on it, I'll help support. I think couples therapy is sometimes helping couples have the courage to voice what they really want, and that may be separation. I can't ethically dive into some of your questions or give specific resources, but get in touch with their local crisis line or a community service agency and they can direct you. I intentionally have to be really vague and I can't comment on specific cases. It's unethical. I hope this helps open the door to therapy for you or your loved ones in tough situations. If it's any help, I'm a therapist who goes to their own therapist. I'm wishing all of you best with your relationships and in laws and parents. Also, some of these situations are nuanced, some are not. I'm not saying sharing your location with your partner is cruel or that sending a picture to your spouse is. Therapists get a ton of data and history and information that helps us better understand what's going on. And sometimes there's a dynamic between two people and they can set off a cycle. Read Sue Johnson's book for this, Love Sense and Hold Me Tight. Other times, I think it's unethical to assume a partner was hit because they deserved it or set their partner off.
That's not okay.
Please do reach out to your local agencies and crisis line if you or a loved one needs help. All right, so if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this one. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for hanging out with me on this one.